Who needs caffeine on this Wednesday morning when you have the political insiders? On the left, Kip 2, on the right, Abdul, Hakim-Shabazz. Let's talk about the bounce from these conventions in Charlotte and in Tampa. We saw that Mr. Romney got a bounce, Mr. Obama got a bounce. Does it mean anything?
Well, I don't think Romney got much of a bounce, but
and you're being unbiased, of course.
Well, I mean, the polls were the polls. I don't think
he's right on that one.
There wasn't much of a bounce. And the president, the first initial poll shows some bounce to him, but I think in this day and age, with the conventions being held later and the bombardment of advertising we've had since, literally March, I think it's been on both campaigns, that there's literally not a large undecided block, and so you don't have as much room for a bounce, if you will. The president, though, in most of the polling I've seen now is cracked 50%. He's at 52%, so I think he comes out of this with the advantage at the end of these conventions.
What does it mean for Romney, then?
The trick for the Romney people is you showed up your base, but you haven't quite sealed the deal with those independent and undecided voters. Now, the good news for the Romney people, and I think what probably mitigated some of the president's bounce, was the unemployment, where we showed that unemployment is still an issue. We had hundreds of thousands of people sort of quit looking for work or go back to school. But at the end of the day, I would much rather be in the president's position, above 50%, than Mitt Romney, because they got for every day you're not getting ahead or making ground, you got to work that much harder. And 50-something days out to election day, you really got to kick it into gear.
The next big thing that's coming up are the debates, and I think that's the opportunity for both campaigns. It's when more Americans are paying attention. They actually pay more attention to the debates than they do the conventions. So
October the 3rd.
That'll be one of the big markers of this election.
As I said, who needs caffeine when you have the political insiders? You can watch them every Wednesday morning here on Good Morning Indiana and on Indianapolis This Week, Sundays on RTV6. And our conversation continues on the IndyChannel.com. We're expecting new poll information on that other big race that's affecting our state, which is the governor's race. What can we expect from those numbers?
If the polls are consistent with the way they've been before, and from what I've spoken to folks privately and internally, Mike Pence should still have a very comfortable, substantial lead over John Gregg. Mike Pence has been in the low 50s, John Gregg in the sort of, on a good day, upper 30s, low 40s. But I still think at the end of the day, the governor's race is Mike Pence's to lose.
Well, I think we're going to see movement in the polling. He's given him higher numbers than any poll I've seen. John Gregg higher numbers than any poll I've seen, because he's trying to tamp down expectations. I think what's happening here is John Gregg's commercials have cut through all the noise. Through the car commercials and all the other commercials out there, he's got something unique on the air, and he's doing what he was supposed to be doing, which is standing out in this election cycle, and I think it's going to inure to his benefit, and those polls are going to tighten up.
When you see those commercials, I am sort of caught by the humor, if you want to call it humor, from the Gregg campaign, but then on the flip side, Mr. Pence is using who could be the first lady, Mrs. Pence, to talk about him being the education governor. Does that make a difference? Is that strategic, that she's talking to women voters?
Yeah, I think part of it is also you want to humanize your candidate. That's why John Gregg goes for the folks in his hometown of Sanborn. That's why Mike Pence uses his wife Karen. I think the bigger issue, though, for John Gregg is going to be, once you get past sort of the hokiness and the folksiness of his commercials, okay, give me substance, give me something to work with, give me specifics, give me details. And just like the presidential debates, I think will make a difference. The gubernatorial debates as well, that John Gregg can say he's not just a guy from Sanborn, with a mustache.
I think he's going to have to lay out in his advertising his plans as well, because not as many people follow the gubernatorial debates as they do presidential debates, so it's not the opportunity that it ought to be. I wish more people did follow the gubernatorial debates. People do tune into the presidential. But John Gregg, in order to win this race, is going to have to contrast himself with Mike Pence. I think he's going to do that successfully. I think middle-of-the-road voters in Indiana, when they find out that Mike Pence is an extremist, are not going to be for him.
And John Gregg needs to stop talking about social issues and actually talk about substantive issues, because the only person talking about social issues in this whole governor's race is John Gregg.
Well, because, and there's a reason for that, and that's because Mike Pence has spent 12 years in Congress only dealing with social issues, didn't pass a single bill that talked about jobs, didn't pass a single bill to help veterans, didn't pass a single bill, period. And so that is an important component when people are going to the ballot box and saying, who am I going to support? Well, I think the Democrats are trying to highlight the fact that Mike Pence has been all about social issues, and now he's trying to hide from his record.
You got him going. You see, you got him going. I want to wrap this up with a question. A new poll suggesting that if, for the presidency, that some folks, when it comes to having dinner with the president, they pick Mr. Obama. If it's someone, the captain of a ship when there's a storm, Mr. Obama. Do we really care about dinner and who's manning the Titanic? I mean, I want issues. Don't we all want issues?
Yeah, and yes, I think that's important, but I think what the pollster is doing in that case, because they also asked the question about who do they support for president, and they asked the underline. They're trying to get to the decision-making process that Americans make when they go into the voting booth, and the person that you like is an important factor, because they have to sit there and watch that person for the next 4 years. So I think it does have some bearing on who they're going to pick.
Yeah, likability, or as we say in the the ad biz, ethos, sort of the credibility of the individual is always a big deal with voters. Go back to John Kerry, George W. Bush, Al Gore, George W. Bill Clinton, Herbert Walker Bush. I mean, it's fundamentally a likability thing, and if people like you, they'll listen to you. And even if they disagree with you, they'll still give you a second shot. So likability is a big deal.
Yeah, and I'd also say with respect to the captain of the ship, I mean, it's a metaphor for who's going to be running the country. Who do you trust to run the country in a time of crisis? So it's just a different way of getting to that leadership question.
So I take it that you're each going to buy dinner for each other because you like each other that well?
No, we thought you were buying.
We thought you were buying.
We'll see about that. The political insiders, Kip 2, Abdul Hakim-Shabazz, thank you so much. You can watch us every Wednesday on RTV6, on Good Morning Indiana, and on the IndyChannel.com. Thanks for watching.